In 32 years of power, one man stole an estimated $5 billion from one of Africa's richest nations, while his people had no roads, no electricity, and no future. This is the story of Mobutu Sese Seko, the man who owned a country. He was born Joseph-Désiré Mobutu on the 14th of October 1930 in Lisala, in the Belgian Congo. His father, a cook for a Belgian judge, died when Mobutu was just 8 years old. Raised by an uncle and a grandfather, he found structure in the Belgian Colonial Army, where he rose to the rank of Sergeant Major, the highest position an African could achieve at that time. After leaving the army in 1956, he became a journalist, and through his press contacts, met the Congolese nationalist leader Patrice Lumumba. That meeting would change the course of history. When Congo gained independence in 1960, Mobutu was appointed Army Chief of Staff. But behind the scenes, backed by the United States and Belgium, he helped orchestrate the removal and eventual execution of Lumumba, the very man who had trusted him. It was a sign of things to come. On the 24th of November 1965, Mobutu seized full power in a military coup, exploiting a crisis between the president and prime minister. He banned all political parties and declared himself the sole authority of the nation. An iron grip had closed around the Congo, and it would not loosen for 32 years. To cement his power, Mobutu launched what he called the Authenticité campaign, a movement to strip away all traces of colonial culture. In October 1971, he renamed the country the Republic of Zaire. In January 1972, he renamed himself, abandoning Joseph-Désiré Mobutu for the title Mobutu Sese Seko Nkuku Ngbendu Wazabanga, meaning the all-powerful warrior who goes from conquest to conquest, leaving fire in his wake. Western clothing was banned. European names for children were outlawed. His portrait was mandatory in every home, every school, every office. The evening news opened with an image of him descending through clouds, like a god. But behind the spectacle lay something far darker. Mobutu was looting his nation on a breathtaking scale. He embezzled an estimated $5 billion from state funds. He built a grand presidential palace deep in the jungle at Badalite, complete with a runway long enough to land a Concorde jet. He nationalized industries, handed contracts to allies, and reshuffled his cabinet 60 times in 32 years to keep those around him fearful and corrupt. The economy collapsed, the infrastructure crumbled, and still, the money flowed. Not to the people, but to Mobutu's private accounts in European banks. He survived because the world let him. Throughout the Cold War, the United States, France, and Belgium poured military and financial support into his regime. He was their man in Central Africa, a bulwark against communism. He met President Nixon in Washington in 1973. He met President Bush in 1989. As long as he opposed the Soviet Union, the West looked the other way. But when the Cold War ended, so did the protection. By 1990, economic collapse forced Mobutu to allow a multi-party system. Opposition grew. His grip began to slip. Then, in November 1996, rebel forces led by Laurent-Désiré Kabila, backed by Rwanda and Uganda, began sweeping across Zaire. Mobutu, now gravely ill with prostate cancer, could mount no effective resistance. On the 16th of May 1997, as rebel forces closed in on Kinshasa, he fled, boarding his private jet and leaving behind the country he had spent 32 years destroying. The following day, Kabila's forces entered the capital, and Zaire became the Democratic Republic of Congo once more. Mobutu Sese Seko died on the 7th of September 1997 in Rabat, Morocco, aged 66, of the cancer that had consumed him in exile. He was buried in Morocco, far from the country he had ruled with absolute power. Almost no one mourned him there. The Democratic Republic of Congo remains one of the poorest nations on earth. Despite holding some of the world's largest reserves of copper, cobalt, diamonds, and gold. The instability that continues to this day can be traced in no small part to the 32 years Mobutu spent not building a nation, but dismantling one. He called himself the all-powerful warrior. But history remembers him differently, as the man who had everything and left his people with nothing. If you want more untold stories from African history, subscribe to the African Chronicle. New documentaries every week.